Hey guys, coming at me another movie for guys, continuing my 31 days of horror movie reviews, and this is review number 10. I'm very close to getting there, guys, honestly. Tomorrow, I will definitely be able to do one a day. I've been trying to do that, and I think that's going to work out tomorrow. Hopefully that works out. And I will be continuing my Frankenstein movie reviews now. As I said, this will be the last one because, and I'll tell you guys why this is the last one when I get to the acting and things like that. There's a good reason why this is the last one. And this is a movie that I really didn't know how it was going to be, because the first two I absolutely loved. I think they're both horror masterpieces that need to be seen by everyone if you're fans of horror, or if you want to see a great movie in general, watch both of those. They're amazing movies. Honestly, that's a movie I suggest to, like, a film class. Watch both those movies. They're amazing. I really didn't know how this movie was going to be. It's not talked about a lot. I didn't really know too much about it, and, I didn't really know how this movie was going to be overall, but that is the 1939 horror sequel. It's not really a classic, Son of Frankenstein. Son of Frankenstein, like I said, I really did not know how this movie was going to be. I didn't know what it was really about either. I kind of went into it blind. Honestly, I did. I watched it right after Bride of Frankenstein because I was like, let's waste no time. Let's just watch this, see how it is. And Son of Frankenstein overall is a great movie. I thought it was a pretty great movie. Does it hold up as well as the first two movies? No. Is it a masterpiece like the first two movies? No. In fact, this movie does have a few problems. I do think this movie has a few problems. It's not a perfect movie, but it's not a bad movie. It's a great movie overall. I think it's a great movie. It's not as rewatchable as the first two. I don't think it's aged as well, but I do think overall it is a pretty great movie. Now, the plot of Son of Frankenstein is actually pretty complex. It's a pretty complex plot, but it had to be, honestly. After the first two films, it's understandable why it's such a complex plot. Because this film focuses on the son of Frankenstein, if you can't tell from the plot, obviously. It focuses on the son of Frankenstein, Wolf Frankenstein. He basically has returned to the town, basically, and he relocates his wife and their son Peter, and the town is now called Frankenstein, but Frankenstein is looked at as this really bad man, and he basically wants to do whatever he can to redeem his father's reputation, but he's, there are all these rumors about his father, and he doesn't know if it's true or not, and if his father really did do all these things that people claim he does, and basically one day, he meets up with this man, Igor, who basically convinces him to basically reanimate the monster that supposedly died in the second one and didn't. Basically wants him to reanimate this monster, and Wolf doesn't think it went well. He doesn't think that when he brings back the monster, he doesn't think that it went well. He thinks that he failed it, but secretly Igor starts basically doing whatever he can to get the monster to actually do some bad things and listen to his commands, and he's using the monster for much more deep things, much more evil things than Wolf thinks he's doing, and basically that's the basic plot of Son of Frankenstein. I know it's a very complex plot, but that basically is the plot, and it definitely, as you can tell, that's one of the things that I think is not as good in this movie. That's a lot more of a complex plot. The first two films were very easy plots. They're very easy plots. There wasn't a lot of exposition, and this movie has a ton of it. It really does. I do think the performances in this movie overall are really good. Basil Rathbone as Wolf Frankenstein, he had a big shoes to fill. He really had big shoes to fill because obviously Clive Cutter was amazing as Frankenstein. He was perfectly casted. I really didn't know how he was going to be. He did a pretty great job, I have to say. I mean, you really see him as this man who doesn't know what to do, honestly. He doesn't know how to, he's not very well liked by a lot of people because his father, of course, and he only really has one friend. You feel really bad for this guy. You want things to go well for him, and I think he really did a great job with that. Something else I really love about his character, that he doesn't have the same passion for bringing people back from the dead that his father did, and I thought that was definitely very well done. I really loved that about his character, and thought he overall did a very, very good job. He was definitely very good, and he's not as good as Clive Cutter, obviously. He's not Clive Cutter, but he holds his own, honestly. He holds his own. I don't think he was perfect, but I do think that he held his own overall. Some points he was a bit over the top and a bit cheesy, and that's to say everyone in the film pretty much is that way. I think everyone in the film at some points is kind of cheesy. Sorry, my lens is very blurry, but I think everyone at some point in the movie is kind of cheesy, but I think he did do a very good job, and overall he was pretty good. Now, the main reason that this is the last Frankenstein movie I'm reviewing is because it's the last one that Boris Karloff decided to do. And the reason being is because, one, it took him very long to get all that makeup on, obviously. It's not easy to just throw all that makeup on and look like a monster. It's not easy to do. Two, these movies after this very much started to become cash grabs, and Boris Karloff didn't want to be a part of that. He didn't just want cash grabs. He wanted good stories, and he didn't want these movies to continue for no reason, so he kind of left, and that's understandable because the monster really doesn't have a character in this movie. That's my biggest problem with this movie, is that the monster, they build him up so well in the first two movies, and in this, he really doesn't have much of a character, I think. I think he's much more of just the main thing in this movie is that he's brought back and he's performing all these evil deeds and he doesn't really think anything of it. And I get that he's supposed to be reborn again, but I mean, why, how did he survive and how is his body still there? I mean, when you explode, you've exploded, you're gone, like you're cremated. I don't understand how he's still alive. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. They don't really explain how he's alive and how he survived, what happened to him. I get that he's a monster and they don't really die, but they don't really explain it, and he also isn't in the movie very much at all. He doesn't have much of a character, and all he really does is perform evil deeds, and I can understand why Boris Karloff left because he was good, but also his talking is gone. He doesn't talk in this movie like he does in the last one, and maybe it's because of the explosion. Maybe it impaired his speech. Maybe that's why, and maybe he doesn't know how to talk anymore. I understand that, but I just felt he didn't have much of a character, and it kind of pissed me off, and it almost ruined the movie for me, but luckily it didn't because everyone else is really good, and I think Boris Karloff really wasn't as good as he could have been, but I think it's also because you could tell he wasn't as passionate. You could tell that he really didn't want to do these movies anymore, and I think he was good for what he was in, though. For one final performance, I think he was pretty good, and it wasn't his final performance. He did, I think, do one other short thing with Frankenstein, like a short film or something. I think it was actually House of Frankenstein, which, it's pretty much just a bunch of shorts of the popular Universal monsters at the time. And I think he was good for what he was in, but he wasn't the best. Now, something I actually really did like is that Bela Lugosi was the other big horror star of the time. He did Dracula, and he did all those films, and they really wanted to do a film that collabed him and Boris Karloff, and he, of course, plays Igor in this film. Not Igor, Igor. And it's not like the first one with Fritz. This is not the same character. This is a different character. This is the character, Igor. And Igor is a great villain. He is an awesome villain, honestly. I thought he did a great job because you can tell right away that this guy has a very big, he's hell-bent on revenge. This is a man that's hell-bent for revenge because basically, he is basically as bad as the monster. I mean, he's this blacksmith who he survived a hanging for grave robbing, and he has a deformed neck as a result, and he's basically hell-bent on revenge, and he wants this monster to do all these bad things, and I think he did a phenomenal job, I have to say. He was very creepy, he was very menacing, and you really feared this guy, and you could tell probably one of the reasons the monster does these things because he's kind of scared of him, and I can understand that. I mean, Igor is very powerful, and I thought that was something that I really enjoyed. I thought he did a really solid job overall, and also Lionel Atwell I thought was really great as Inspector Crow, who is the only friend of Wolf, and you really see why he's the friend of Wolf and why he has this bond with him and why he cares about him so much and that he doesn't want him. You know, he doesn't just think of his father's reputation. He thinks it's kind of stupid that he's not liked because of his father's reputation, and I thought he overall did a very good job, and I really liked him in the movie. Josephine Hutchison as Elsa really doesn't have too much of a character. She doesn't have a lot to do in the movie. She's pretty much just Wolf's wife, but I thought she was good for what she was in. I thought Donnie Dunnigan as Peter was honestly kind of annoying. He really was. I mean, child actors, don't annoy me a lot, but he was pretty annoying. He really doesn't have much of a character. He's just kind of just there to have a little boy in the movie, and this was also made during the Great Depression when people really wanted hope, so I kind of feel like he was there because he's a little boy, and that kind of just brings people joy when they see a little boy. Fine, but just really has not aged well. I thought he was okay, though, for what he was in. The directing here is actually not by James Whale, and it really does show in this movie. The emotion is gone, the passion is gone. It's a lot more of just a fun movie, and Roland V. Lee, I think, did a good job with that. He did a good job. He understood the movie, I think, not as well as James Whale did. He didn't understand the subtext as well, but I think he did understand what Frankenstein needs to be, and that's something I thought he did a very good job with. But my biggest issue with this movie, as I said, is the screenplay. Mainly because, the story is very complex, definitely. Two, you know, it's a very complex story. There's a lot to get into in this movie, which the movie does handle all that very well. But my other problem is that the emotion is kind of gone. The movie is very, very cheesy at times. It was hard to take it seriously at some points. There were points where I wanted to laugh, and I didn't know if it was supposed to be funny or not. It's one of those kind of movies. But it's also, I think, kind of, like I said, it really is not aged very well at all. It has not aged very well. The makeup looks very good. The cinematography looks very good, definitely, especially on Igor. Igor looks amazing. He looks as demented as the monster. In fact, you would think that he actually is a monster, and that's something I really loved about the movie. Something I definitely was not a fan of is that the wolf and the monster are the same height, and maybe it's because the monster isn't supposed to be as much of a threat, and that maybe it's that, Igor's just that more powerful. But isn't the whole thing supposed to be that the monster is this tall figure that's so much more powerful than Frankenstein thinks, and that's why he can't really defeat him, and that's why he doesn't feel right in doing what he's doing? I mean, that to me really, that's really what seems like, and in this, they're the same height, and it's definitely not as effective. I thought it was okay, just a small issue right there, but it does kind of make a huge difference if you think about it. I think it kind of affected the movie a little bit, and I definitely didn't like that as much. I also really was not as into this movie. I think the movie overall isn't as engaging as the first two. It is engaging in the sense of what the movie's about, but it's definitely not as interesting, and there is a lot of filler in this movie. My biggest issue is the editing. I know I said the screenplay, but honestly my biggest issue is the editing, because the first two films were like 70-something minutes long. They were very quick, and they really didn't have any problems because there really was so much story to do that they didn't waste any time. This movie is 99 minutes, and it really shows. It feels long, mainly because the other two were so short. This film did feel long, and there are a lot of scenes that really are very unnecessary. There's so many scenes with the family, and they were very unnecessary to me. I really felt that they did not need to be in there, and I really felt the film could have been a lot shorter than it was. Maybe cut back on some of the scenes of the family and, focus more. They do focus on the overall story, but they have so many scenes with the family. I felt so many of them were so unnecessary, and I didn't like that as much. That it kind of took me out of the movie at points. I did feel, however, that the story of Frankenstein is intact. It does show why this movie is important, and it does show why we need this movie. We need to see how his kids, how his son was going to be affected by this, and that's something I definitely really did love about the movie. Also, I will say that this is supposed to take place years later, but it doesn't really seem like as much time has passed. Like, the clothing is pretty much the same. They never really say when the Frankenstein movies take place, which I'm fine with, but it didn't just really seem like a lot of time has passed. It kind of seems like this is just a few years later, which is fine, but it just didn't seem like as much effort was put into this movie. I will say the ending, I thought, was really good to this movie. My only complaint with the ending, which I am going to talk about real quick, I will say, my only complaint with the ending to the movie is, one, why would they kill the monster if the monster decided not to kill this child? Why would he do that? I don't understand. All of a sudden, the monster just doesn't decide to kill the child. It felt kind of out of character for the monster in this movie, because the monster so far had done all these evil things for no reason, and it didn't have much of a character to begin with, so I didn't care as much. They're trying to get you to care, and it's just kind of too late when they did that. And my other problem with the movie is that the ending, when they give this, key to the city, when Wolf leaves the key to Frankenstein's castle to the villagers, it's obviously not going to go well. It's not going to go well, and I thought the ending was kind of stupid the way they ended that. I didn't like that the movie just ended with them on that train. I thought it was pretty underwhelming, and I definitely did not like that as much as I did. There is definitely some tension in this movie. The movie is definitely tension-filled. You definitely do feel that. But overall, guys, I did think Son of Frankenstein was a pretty great movie. I did really enjoy it overall. I don't think it's as good as the first two films. Definitely not as good. It doesn't have the same emotional grip, and it's not as gripping and exciting as the first two. But it still does get a 4 out of 5 or a B+. I do really enjoy this movie overall. I didn't like it as much as the first two. I think the first two are a lot more engaging. But I will say, overall, watching these three movies, I really enjoyed watching. It was cool to see a take on a monster that we all know and love, of course, and see how they did in these three movies, and I really liked reviewing them for you guys, and it's definitely probably some of the highlights of 31 Days of Horror so far. But that's just my review for Son of Frankenstein. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you guys saw this movie, have seen. I know a lot of you probably haven't seen this movie, and I would recommend it, honestly. I can recommend this movie. Just know that it's not as good as the first two, and that it is kind of cheesy at points. But despite that, I think it is a pretty good movie, and I think you definitely should check it out. But that's just my review. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which I can't wait for because it will be for the season premiere of The Walking Dead, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.